Well, welcome everyone to another episode of the Hector and Mike Experience, Common Sense in an Uncommon World. This week or for this episode, we've got quite a bit of different topics, Mike, that I think that have been just kind of swirling around, including Barbara Boxer. We just found out this week that she ended up getting mugged over in Oakland at Jack London Square. She was hit from behind, knocked down, had her cell phone stolen, we don't wish any bad on anyone, but she's doing well right now and recuperating and so forth. And this is kind of par for the course as to some of the crimes that are happening in the Bay Area.
It's crimes happening throughout California, and you're right. We don't wish ill on anyone. We all know her as Senator Boxer, but she's 80 years old. She's not a young person. So any kind of, trauma like that can be devastating to someone. The interesting thing is it happens in the middle of the day. It was at 1:15 in the afternoon. It happened in Oakland, but it happened in Jack London Square, which is a rather popular and well-populated place. And so, she becomes a random victim of violence. And what will be interesting, because it did happen in the middle of the day, I'm sure there were a lot of people around in Jack London Square. A lot of the stores have cameras. It shouldn't be too difficult for the police, if they want, to catch this person. And then we'll see, A, if they do that, and B, is it a repeat offender? Is it someone who has done this before because of the new laws in California that, have gotten rid of bail, have required people to come back to court on their honor, which is the most bizarre thing I've ever heard, you asking criminals to come back on their honor. All of the crazy stuff that has happened with our criminal justice system in this state will now be put, hopefully, on trial. Because we'll see we'll see who the perpetrator of this is. And, we may find out at the end of all this thing that, they catch this person, they go to court, and then, Barbara Boxer has to come in and, issue an apology to the person for getting in their way when they were trying to steal her cell phone. That's entirely possible, too, the way the laws are these days. So we'll see what happens.
Well, as long as the cell phone was worth over $950, because that seems to be that's the threshold over in California as to whether you get charged with a misdemeanor or some sort of felony. As long as the merchandise you stole was under $950, but there's other circumstances here, which is the battery of the senator. But you're right. I mean, for a social justice warrior like Barbara Boxer, who's in the past has talked about, making it easier or being more lenient toward the amount of people that we have in jail, and, saying, we maybe have too many people in jail, we should kind of go through some rehabilitation program. It will be interesting to see who this person is, what the rap sheet is, if they've got a rap sheet or not, and what are the consequences. And, I think a perfect question for the media would be, what kind of justice is she looking for? In this particular situation, not just for herself, but really looking at for other people who in the Bay Area, and like you said, in other parts of California, have been dealing with this, because we have seen a rise in crime. We have seen a rise in homicides. We have seen this great movement that has happened, and I'm not talking about great in the sense of good, but it's just a big movement that has happened, that started in the Bay Area, of defund the police. And not just defund the police, but also create citizenship type commissions in order to oversee what the police are doing. And so now that you're seeing, we see more video coming out of the Bay Area as in other places of criminals going into the CVS store or the Walgreens store and walking out with a bag of merchandise. That's starting to put some pressure on Gavin Newsom, where he's looking to change some laws. It's starting to put some pressure on other folks because they're looking for re-election. But now, she's out of office, and now she's a victim of crime. So we'll see what type of justice she looks for on this issue.
It'll be interesting, because I vividly remember the mayor of, I think it was Portland, Oregon, who's let folks just run amok in Portland, Oregon. They've taken over the city, and he's all, fine, it's okay, don't worry about it. And then he becomes a victim of crime, and what does he do? He calls the police. He wants to defund. So you're right. It'll be interesting. And by the way, again, it is sad about Barbara Boxer, but the one that makes my head spin is Gavin Newsom, because now he's running around saying, well, there's too much crime out there, we got to change these laws. Dude, you're the ones that helped get them passed. You're the ones that got rid of the bail. You're the one that said it's okay to reduce things from a violent felony to just a plain felony if you rape someone who can't say no, or you give them a date rape drug, and and then you take advantage of them. I'm not sure what he was thinking, or any of those people that voted for that were thinking, but the chickens are coming home to roost. Crime is a major issue in this country, and I will tell you, from a national level, it's very interesting. In Nevada, where there's a Democrat running for re-election for governor, you got the sheriff of Clark County, who's going to run as a Republican, as the leading candidate. In Michigan, you got the sheriff of Detroit, who's going to run as a Republican. Crime is a huge issue, not just in California, but in this country. It's especially huge in California because of the stupidity, just the plain common sense stupidity that some of these legislators have done, that have made this state unsafe for everybody, including an 80-year-old grandmother who used to be a United States senator.
Right, and we saw that kind of play out in New York in the primary election, where you had a lot of Democrats, but the Democrat who talked about the crime issue, who talked about needing more police, ended up winning over in the primary. And so,
he's a
former police officer.
Yep.
Yeah, so we've seen that already, and I think we'll end up seeing more of it. But and I hate to say this, but a lot of things are geared on poll numbers. That as it relates to a lot of these people in office, they start looking at the poll numbers. They start saying, okay, what are my top 3 issues or 4 issues impacting me? And with crime, that you and I have seen these poll numbers kind of increasing. And impacting, not just across the United States, but here in California, we're beginning to see some interesting poll numbers in California in this recall election, as we are nationally with Joe Biden, where we've seen kind of a cratering of his administration. We've seen about what I don't quite remember off the top of my head, but I believe it's a 9 to 10 point drop for Joe Biden.
20-point drop in his favorability.
Man, I'm point shaving here, so you take this one on then.
I'll take the over and the points. Yeah, it's really interesting in the Joe Biden situation. After about 6 or 7 months, it doesn't matter who's president. There's always kind of the honeymoon wearing off, except for Donald Trump, who never had a honeymoon. It was battling up until November of 2016, and then battling through the transition, and then battling from the inauguration. So there never was a honeymoon for Trump with either the left or with the media. But every other president, has a decent honeymoon, Republican and Democrat. And usually after about 6 or 7 months, people stop and say, okay, where are we right now? And in the case of Joe Biden, after 6 or 7 months in office, let's face it, he got elected on being able to make everybody safe. And people don't feel safe anymore. The virus is winning. And in essence, because of people not getting vaccinated, and you have a situation where you have what I would call a woke administration that doesn't want to start pointing blame and pointing fingers at people. But the reality is, it's people that are not vaccinated that are causing this spike in the virus. The CDC, has now reversed itself and said people need to wear masks indoors. California, they've done the same thing. If you're going into restaurants or bars, you have to wear a mask. And so that's the biggest thing, I think, is right there. And then there's the other factors. People, go to the gas pump to fill up their SUV. They're paying twice as much. They're paying $100 to fill up their SUV when before they were paying $50 7 months ago. Our energy independence is gone. Those kinds of things also make people sit and wonder, where are we 6 or 7 months later? Yes, he's someone that is more friendly. He's someone that you probably want to sit and have a beer with. He's a nice guy. He doesn't send out mean tweets. But all of that kind of stuff, which, were the things that some people voted for him because of, they're now less important than the things that actually affect people's everyday life. We were moving in the right direction. Things were opening up. People's masks were disappearing. People were getting the vaccine. We were, doing Monty Hall. Everybody gets you get behind what's door number 1, you get a vaccine. You get behind door number 2, it gets a vaccine. And, they tried the carrot approach, that's for sure, giving things away. Now they've run into the brick wall, and the reality that this Delta variant is bad enough and in a weird way, smart enough to be able to get around all of this stuff and start making the rates of infection rise again. And the problem that they have, I just want to finish on this point. The problem that they have is there's a simple solution to this. It really is, but they don't want to do it. If you go, when we get through, if you get on the phone and you call your insurance agent and you say, "Hey, Mary, I want to take out a life insurance policy." You know what the first question Mary's going to ask you? Do you smoke? Well, if you do, it's going to cost you more money. That's where we got to start looking. They've tried all of this giveaway program, feel-good program. Here's money for this. Here's money for that. Here's your gift card to Target and what have you. They got to look at it and say, we know from a health standpoint that if you don't get the vaccine, you're not only exposing yourself to the virus, you're exposing others who actually have gotten the vaccine to the virus. Because of that, we now have to take retrenchment steps. You got to wear a mask inside and all of this other stuff. So guess what? If you decide not to get the vaccine, that's your choice. Free to do that. But your health insurance rates may go up 10% to cover the cost of all of these things. There needs to be some kind of approach that says you need to get the vaccine. It's not all equal. It's not all okay to say, I don't want to do it. If you don't want to do it, that's your right. But it's my right, for example, why do I have to pay the same insurance rates as someone that, smokes 5 packs of cigarettes a day? I don't. It should be the same kind of thing. But that's a difficult thing to do when you're working in a woke environment of everybody is equal and everybody gets treated the same. They shouldn't be. People who get vaccinated should be able to live their life. People that decide not to for whatever reason, there should be some kind of cost to that, whether it's in the pocketbook or in freedom or opportunity. There should be some kind of cost to that.
Well, I want to stay on this particular topic, and you're right. I heard it from a couple of friends of mine who are beginning to finally get their businesses opened, and barely getting customers in. Obviously they're still having a tough time trying to find help, employees to work at those places, but there was a sense of hey, things are going to come back to normal now with this resurgence of the coronavirus, and you've got LA County numbers. I mean, mind you, it is a very huge county, but you're getting a lot more numbers kind of coming day after day after day of people being infected. And, there's a movement there where you got to wear a mask indoors. But the big question now coming in from the governor is, are we going to go back to shutting down the state? At what point do we shut down the state? And had we had the tiered system as we did before, we had all these little color-coded systems, there would be about 10 or 12 counties that would be shut down right now,
Right.
Because of the infection rate. And so for everyone else, for everyone who has gotten vaccinated, who's looking to send their kids back to school, looking to open up their businesses, and what does it do to them? What does it do to those? And we kind of joked around. Maybe what we should do in every community is put a list of everyone who's been vaccinated and not vaccinated, and peer pressure will take care of it. But at the end of the day, I think your approach and your suggestion is well taken. I think there is, and we do have the change. We do have a difference between those who smoke, those who don't, on the healthcare costs, and as a variety of other things.
Mm-hmm.
When you're getting life insurance, I got some life insurance, and they ask, litany of questions.
Yeah. I mean, even if you go for a medical exam, I mean, I went for a procedure about 3 weeks ago that had nothing to do with the lungs. First, one of the questions, did you smoke? And it's like, there are certain things that people do that have habits that cause them to be at greater risk. And because of that, they have to pay more for their health care, or they have to pay more for their insurance. And I think we've reached the point that with the coronavirus and all of the different variants, it's obvious that you are exposing yourself and others to a greater health risk if you don't get the shot. You don't want to get the shot, no one's going to force you to do it. But there should be some cost to that somewhere along the line. And, you mentioned schools. I mean, they came out, I think, this week talking about how kids K through 12 are going to have to wear masks in school when they go back to school. If people are doing the right thing and some people aren't, again, it goes back to this whole thing that everybody's equal. They're not. If you're not taking responsibility, there should be some cost to that. That's all. And yeah, that's, probably not a very popular thing these days because everybody needs to feel good. But it's clear that this thing is let me just use this one example. We'll bring in my good friend, Dr. Fauci, who, I think Rand Paul, by the way, is like the happiest guy in the world for Dr. Fauci because he did a session with him a week ago on the Senate where they were battling back and forth. And I swear to God, within 5 hours, my email is flooded with messages from Rand Paul saying, I just took Dr. Fauci to task. Send me some money. And I'm like, yeah, Rand Paul, you got a case. I'm not sure what your vaccine you're taking, but I ain't doing that. But here's what happens. The governor of Alabama, Kay Ivey, says that the reason, she comes out in very plain-spoken woman, the reason that the rate of infection in Alabama is going up is because people aren't getting vaccinated. And those people need to get vaccinated. Dr. Fauci goes on the Sunday talk shows and agrees with her 100% for laying the blame there. The press secretary for the White House, for the administration, gets in front of the podium and says, well, we don't like to lay blame. Wimp. Lay blame. I mean, not, again, this is, if it's that important, and it is, and if it can solve the problem, and it can, say so. And if it pisses people off, it pisses people off. But your job is to lead and say, this is what you need to do to protect yourself and protect others and get our life back to normal again. And to answer your question, by the way, will the state shut down? We'll know that on September 15th.
Well, and that's
after the recall.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, you've got the recall numbers are out. Just you've got all these different polls coming out. You've just got one that just came out recently that has tightened up the situation dramatically as to, because the most important question, you got two questions, but the most important question is, should he be recalled or not? And that number is getting tighter and tighter, where I believe the number is about 47%, kind of not happy with Gavin Newsom. And a lot of it goes into, as we talked about earlier, the crime, but there's a lot of uncertainty as to what's happening with the virus. There are a lot of gimmicky things happening, a lot of money going back and forth. But if we're getting to a point where we're looking to shut down, you've got the wildfires that are kicking in. You've got a major drought that is upon us, and people are beginning to wonder. It's like, look, we had a drought about 5-6 years ago. Our reservoirs were full 2 years ago. What happened to all the water? This water system is supposed to carry us over for 5 years, but yet what happened to all the water? And at the same time, why, with all this amount of money that we've got, why haven't we been investing in water infrastructure? Why does the governor seem to be, carrying the banner for defunding the police, making it easier on criminals to get out of jail, and he's, and signing legislation to do so, and now we're getting, now he's getting the remnants of all these policies, or the lack of leadership, and this is all beginning to start showing up on the poll numbers.
Absolutely right. I think that it's within the margin of error, the latest poll that came out on for or against the recall. And what it does is it really does blow away Gavin's political team's argument that this is a Trump movement. in California, started by Trump people. It's not. I mean, this is a movement of people. Think about this. They signed petitions in front of markets and stores and public places during the middle of a pandemic to have this guy recalled. The intensity level, which is what you always measure in an election, not the raw numbers, but the intensity level, has always been on the side of the recall. I mean, that's where the action and the passion has been. Now, what's happening is what actually we've talked about here before. There are other things that are coming into play. You mentioned the wildfires. They're running rampant in Northern California. You mentioned the drought. One of the most productive areas for feeding America, which is the Central Valley of California, doesn't have water, even though they're supposed to have water because of storage and all of that kind of thing. Our leaders have failed them. So they're now back to square one, and they're facing a drought. You have the issue of crime, which has been indiscriminate. To witness Barbara Boxer. She's not in a bad neighborhood in Oakland. She's in Jack London Square in the middle of the day. It's indiscriminate crime that happens not because you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, but because people don't care. And they don't fear the repercussions of their action because of the laws we have here. All of those things are becoming a tsunami on this thing. And
add to it, Mike, homelessness, which is, that has been gripping, California for the last several years. And, even though we've spent $12 billion over the last 3 years, our homeless numbers are up.
Right.
And so you're right. You add all that together and it creates a tsunami of issues. And it's not that, look, California is a wonderful place to live. We got amazing weather, amazing people. A lot of things bind us together, which is great. We got a great baseball team with my Dodgers there. We got a lot of things that bind us together, and it's not as though, and I don't want anyone to think that we're just kind of being down on California, but because there's a lot of great things here. The thing is, when you're flush with money, when you've got all these, you got Silicon Valley, in that is just 122 miles away from the state capital. So why is it that we can't have a government system that can give unemployed people their checks on time? Right. Why do they have to wait 6 months? Why can't we update our computer systems for state government, for the DMV, for other agencies? It seems absurd that we can get these billionaires who can create a rocket ship, fly into orbit, or we can create an all-terrain vehicle, send it 321 miles out to Mars, land it there, have it send us pictures, but yet we can't upgrade our computer systems. We can't get people their unemployment checks. We can't go out and develop new water storage so that we don't have to face another drought. I mean, this idea that if you believe climate change is happening and we're going to have more erratic weather patterns, then what you do is you go out and create more buckets, more pans, more above ground, below ground water storage to make sure that we capture more of this water to hold us over during the erratic weather patterns. But it just seems as though there's a lack of leadership, there's a lack of will, but yet sending an ATV 321 miles, I mean, we can slingshot it out there and have it report back.
And here's the thing, and I'm glad you said that about California. As someone who's not a native, coming from the East Coast, I've always said California was a land that was blessed. It's got sunshine, it's got the mountains, it's got soil that can feed the world and feed the country. It's got people that are some of the smartest people in the world in technology. It truly is a land blessed that has been, in many instances, I wouldn't say ruined, but severely hurt by the lack of leadership. Because everything you just mentioned, especially the drought, is not new. I mean, this isn't just something that happened in the last 2-3 years. I came out here 21 years ago now. They were talking about it then. In the last 21 years, I've seen them where, they drive around the neighborhood to make sure you're only watering on the right day. those kinds of things are ongoing problems that are not solved. You take that, combine it with some of the other stuff, and that's why you get what you have right now in the recall, which is people are pissed off. It's not philosophical. It's competency. Why can't you fix these problems? These things are not new. These things are ongoing. Every year we have wildfires. It's now a wildfire season. Why haven't we done the things necessary to try and mitigate that? You can't stop it all, but you can stop some of it. Why can't we come up with the technology to preserve the water that we have when we have it so it can be used properly for the farmers to grow food? Those kinds of things aren't being addressed. And then you lay on top of that the homeless, the crime, the pandemic. Gavin Newsom's got to, I said this earlier, they may rue the day that they decided to go for a short election cycle because the passion is there of people who have had enough, whether it's because of the water, because of the gas prices, because they can't open their businesses again. He's in a real dangerous situation right now, and I don't think he can buy his way out of it. He can have $70 billion in the bank that's taxpayer money to try and buy his way out of it. I don't think you can buy your way out of this one.
Yeah, it's I think a part of what's happening here in California, and I think it's now impacting the recall is for the last couple of decades. I think you've got a lot of folks that have looked at California as being a good social experiment, a social liberal experiment, where it's okay. Let's pass environmental laws to do this. You got the governors like, okay, we're going to go be all electric. There are places that are trying to pass it. You can have no more gas stoves. They've got to be electric. At the same time, we're going to go protect this bird, this plant, this spotted owl, or whatever it may be. So we can't do any cut down any trees or create fire breaks. And so you pass all these things, you do all these things because you got money here.
Right. And the other thing is, and money, what's the biggest places where we spend money in the state? Homelessness. And has it fixed anything? Absolutely not. And what does the governor say in the last week? He welcomes homeless people from around the country to come to California.
Right.
Well, now we know all the people that are wage earners, that are taxpayers, that are leaving California to go, to glamorous places like, the desert in Nevada or someplace else, or the 125 degrees in Arizona. They're leaving California, and what are we going to replace them with in his mind? Homeless people from other states. Again, it's this kind of thing that you look at and say the leaders are failing us. For him, he's in the crosshairs right now because he's the one on the ballot. I mean, none of these other folks are on the ballot. He's on the ballot alone. He's on that high wire alone. There's no net. The Democrats decided not to put up a candidate. There's no net. So, if he goes off the net or if he goes off the high wire, there's nothing to catch him. And you'll see a change in administration, at least for a year. And I think they're really, if they're not sitting down today and trying to figure out plan B, they're fools because they need to figure that out.
Well, and I think for California itself, I think as we always see, the pendulum ends up swinging, too hard one way, too hard another way. There's some sort of correction. And this whole, social experiment, we're really beginning to see right now a culmination of everything come together. And what I mean is, in California, we've got money. Well, you've got a lot of good wage earners that are able to pay the taxes, may grudgingly pay them. That allows for the social experiments. But as you noted, and we see it with our friends and we see it with other people, they're walking away. They're taking their money somewhere else and they're going to other states. And there comes that breaking point, and we don't know what that break point is. Just like in gas prices, there was that break point, which with the recall of a state senator in Orange County, there is a breaking point with all these experiments, and we're going to see within the Central Valley and some of these other places where you've got towns, and this is the sad part, is you've got towns that are 3 to 6 to 8 months away from running out of water. Their wells are going to go run dry. And there's going to be these trucks that come in, and you're going to have to go with your pails and your buckets to go fill up your water so you can just flush your toilet, brush your teeth, or take a shower. let alone drink the water. And so
Congratulations, the God blessed state of California, with everything and the beauty and the resources that it has, becomes officially a third world country. That's what
yeah,
happens with what you just described, and and especially the area you're talking about. That's even more sinful because it's an area that has land that can grow, that feeds the country and the world. And to do that it's unconscionable to have that kind of situation where these folks, hardworking folks, a lot of people, this is where they make their living. They've lived tilled that land all their lives. Their family has, and now they've got to go with pails to get water. Come on, man. To quote my friend Joe.
yeah. Well, and the thing too is, you look at it. About a year ago, this entire area was considered essential. I mean, they're all essential workers,
Right.
because they feed California, they feed the world, and so now, with this drought, they're going to be going through those hardships. But there is that break point, and I don't know exactly where that break point hits, but there's a lot of folks that you're going to be dealing with the same situation you dealt with 5, 6, 7 years ago, and it's a sad situation. But it all added together is why you're getting some of these poll numbers that you're getting right now. I mean, because with the $78 billion surplus, he should be riding high. I mean, there's money going to everything. I mean, heck, he had money to give away. He's like, we'll put you in a lottery. You can win a million or $1.5 million if you got vaccinated. We'll give you tickets here. We'll give you, it was just a free for all.
That's why I say he can have all the money in the world in political campaigns. When you see the kind of intensity that exists and the kind of little brush fires that are everywhere, you can have all the money in the world. You can't solve your political problem, which is what he has right now. And again, he's out on his own on all of this. It's going to be an interesting next 50 days, I guess it is.
Yeah, and let's end it with a little prediction here, Mike. Do you think Gavin Newsom continues his campaign where he ends up calling this a Trump campaign, or does he end up shifting and start focusing on blaming someone else, or doing some other things on this?
No, I think he continues to blame Trump. I mean, that seems to be what everybody does. It's like, oh, geez, I had the Phoenix Suns over the Bucks and I lost. Now that was Trump's fault. Everybody blames Trump, so he's going to blame Trump. He has nothing else, quite honestly, to blame other than himself. And so he will continue to do that. The thing that's going to be interesting, and it's not something everybody's going to see, but folks like us that have been involved in politics for so long, the question is, can he build a turnout machine to a constituency that is not excited about a recall to get out and vote on September 14th? That's what's going to be the key for him. It's going to be a nuts and bolts thing, not a message thing. I don't think he can overcome the messages that are out there because they're on so many different fronts that you just can't deal with all of them. And clearly, like you said, they spent a ton of money. I think it was $12.5 million or more on the vaccine stuff to get people vaccinated. It really didn't make that much of a difference, as we saw. I don't think having that amount of money is going to save him. It's going to have to be, at this point, it's going to have to be that mechanical operation of taking his constituency, which is not excited about this recall, and getting them out to vote for September 14th. So,
well, Mike, let's end it there, and that concludes another episode of the Hector Mike Experience. We'll get together pretty soon, soon to kind of maybe we can talk about the Olympics and what's going on there.
Yes, I tried out for the Olympics.
Well, you got to be kidding me. Which one? The Paralympics?
The Pizza Olympics. Come on, man.
The Pizza Olympics. Oh, man. I figured that you would do a hot dog eating contest. Yeah, you're right. The pizza eating contest.
Pizza.
That would have been July 4th, I think. So.
Yeah, we'll talk about the Olympics and a couple other things. The Olympics is interesting because, it's always been an event in the middle of summer that brings people together in a very nationalistic way of rooting for the United States and these athletes. And clearly, it is now completely different than what it used to be. I mean, the days of the and I'm dating myself, the 1980 Olympic team, hockey team beating the Russians, and a miracle on ice and all of that kind of stuff, and that national feeling, no matter who you are. You don't see that anymore these days, and truly, I think it's kind of sad. So we'll talk about that on our next podcast.
Well, until the next time, Mike. Great to see you. Great talking to you.
Take care. Take care, everybody.